Welcome back to Just Drive It. We're going to go through and talk about a little piece of advice about some intakes for the 318 LAs. Come along with us. Okay, what am I talking about? Well, a lot of people think that you need the latest and greatest, and I'm going to pull 318 will run into this. I'm actually going to tag him and get him to see if he'll do a commentary on this video as well and put one up. So Tim, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but this is something that he and several others on For A Bodies Only taught me, and so I'll show you what it is and we'll get to it. Okay, everybody thinks that you're going to need an aluminum intake and that you're going to need the latest, greatest, this, that, or the other. Well, these are 360 intakes. They're cast iron. The reason I know they're 360s, they have the smog provisions on them. Both are good intakes. I got them for that one for 75, that one for 100. I just scored this one the other day. The port size is really good if you're running a 318. You don't have to break the bank. Now granted, you can pick up some more time in the quarter mile stuff, but if you're doing a street motor on a budget, I mean, you can't buy another aluminum intake for what I paid for both of these. I'll show you another intake here in a second. Here's another intake. This is on the 67 Coronet. This is an Edelbrock and it is aluminum. Thing is, it's a Performer. A lot of people say, well, why don't you go get that? Well, you're going to pay more for your intake, and this Performer here, the only thing you're going to be really getting away with is you'll be giving away weight, because those are cast iron, this is aluminum, but those actually flow and run just as well as this one. So if you're not all hung up on needing aluminum, look at the others. Now, why does this car have an aluminum intake if I already had one of those other cast irons? Well, you see that little, let's see how, the orange car back over in there? I intended to put the intake with the broken off carburetor bolt onto that, and I was being selfish, so I gave my son the aluminum one because I actually had a test I wanted to do, but eventually it will. What was good is I found this other one and I picked it up. Like I said before, flow is still going to be real good, especially for your 318s, maybe even for your 273s, but 360s, yeah, you might want to step up to something a little bit better. But these are still a very good intake. They flow excellent for the high velocity stuff, and if you're on a really strict budget, these will work. So I think I covered it. I even may have covered most of what Tim would do, but I'm going to take and say, hey, 318 will run. Can you jump in here and give us some numbers and give us some information and some stuff like that with a rebuttal or a inclusive video? So I will say this, that one and that one will both end up on a 360 Magnum in this case, and they'll both see extensive use, and it'll be just fine, because in the case of these motors, they're street motors and we're not looking to be earth-shattering in the power. We do have other intakes available to us, but that's the deal. And as we're trying to keep this going, just drive it. There's all kinds of stuff you can do, from regrinding your camshafts to putting something like this as your intake instead of going out on a limb. What do I mean? Well, we pulled a camshaft out of one of our mule engines, and I'll show you one of those. Okay, this block here is one of our mule engines. It'll get a home job. I've already got the rods ready to go, ARP rod bolts, and they've been checked. We got new rings for it. We're gonna go put in new cam bearings, and we took a camshaft out of it and we sent it off to Oregon Cams to be reground. We'll go there next. Okay, what we have here is one of the cam cores that we sent in. What we had them do is regrind this. This went out to Oregon Cam Grinders. It cost me $178 to have it reground. However, I have better specs on this than what would have been in the stock one. And they will send you your cam card with what it is. So in this case, let's see here, 1341 is the cam grind. So I don't think it's that one. I think it's actually this one. We'll come back in a second. Okay, this is for this cam here. And what it's going to show, it's got 478 lift at a 1.6 rocker ratio, because this is for a Magnum. It is a roller cam. And it also gives open and close, and is -3 overlap at 50 thousandths. It's a hydraulic roller lifter. It gives you your intake center line and your exhaust center line on there. It also gives you lobe separation. Lobe separation of 112. Intake center line is 108. Exhaust is 116. So this is one of the two cams. But they give you the information here. And for a relatively cheap price, because you got to remember, it's not a killer cam as far as super high lift and all that kind of stuff, but it'll do what we want it to do for the motors that we're messing with. And at $178, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than the $300 plus that you would normally get a cam for. One of the other things that we did, this engine I'm actually into for a little bit more than I normally would be. I've had the crank turn. I had ARP rod bolts installed on the rod assemblies. Those are good. And we have brand new rings, and we have brand new bearings. So with our stuff here, we should be able to rebuild that mule motor, which had hardly any taper at all on the cylinders. So where am I going with all this? Well, you see this. You've heard what our plans are eventually for this thing. But let's take it from this standpoint. Say you've got a car like this. It's a V8 car. Say you've got dual exhaust, or say you even don't. Say that you only have single exhaust, you want to put dual exhaust on there. But just say from the standpoint of you've got this car, you need another engine because your LA is way too tired and worn out, and you found a deal. In the case of that Magnum that we're using for a mule engine, we got that one for $100. I lapped the valves on the head. I re-drilled it to an LA bolt pattern. I have a $100 intake that I bought. I've got 178 into a better cam, and I've improved the engine with new bearings, new rings. The crankshaft was redone. Some of the stuff you wouldn't have to do if you went with a little bit higher dollar core, more than what I did, because I just had this sitting around, so that's why I went with it. But for $300 to $400, you could get an engine that you don't have to do that stuff, and basically have to do just an oil pan, timing set, and motor mounts. Put it on there, put your intake on there, and go. But there's stuff to be considered. But with the small amount of stuff that I'm putting into this and a small amount of money, you can do a whole lot more with your car than what some of the other guys will tell you. You don't need steep gears. You don't need the latest and greatest intake manifolds, this, that, or the other. You can actually piece together on a relatively good budget, and by relatively good, I say between $5,000 and $1,000. 318 Will Run has done a $500 build on his one Duster that he has. So that being said, it can be done. This is just stuff for thought. So if you like this, please like, subscribe, Rumble if you're on Rumble. Go ahead and go out there and check out the guys that are doing the No Name 500. If you punch in hashtag No Name 500, give them a look. Some of them need some more subs in order to qualify for the No Name Nationals. And we just hope that you have a good day. Make sure you get out there and drive it.